kiss on the hand may be quite continental, but Dad's Den of Pop Culture is a girl's best friend, although based on my demographics of my viewers, the girls don't know that. So why am I doing a review of Gentlemen Prefer Blondes? Because it's a really funny book that I actually listened to. It was an audiobook version, and I'm like, I got to go ahead and review this. Now, I have been a fan of the movie for quite a while. It's a fun comedy, musical, Jane Russell, Marilyn Monroe, and it's really what most people probably associate Gentlemen Prefer Blondes with, is that movie. But it started life as, in fact, a book written by Anita Loos, really Anita Loos, but apparently everybody just pronounced it Loos, and so she decided just to go along with it and not fight. So she wrote this book in 1925. Now, Loos was an actress, novelist, playwright, and screenwriter. In 1912, she became the first woman staff screenwriter in Hollywood, hired by D.W. Griffith. When pressed, she said that Lorelei Lee, in her book, was based on such actresses as Mae Davis, Mae Clark, Peggy Hopkins, Joyce, and Lillian Lorraine. All actresses that people nowadays, for the most part, probably don't know. The character of Dorothy, who's played by Jane Russell in the film, the well-known film, was based on Loos herself and actress Constance Talmadge. Now, the book has illustrations by Ralph Barton, and we're going to be looking at some of those as we go through this review. Now, the book was turned into a play and a comic strip in 1926, and then was first turned into a silent film in 1928, co-written by Loos. Now, sadly, this film has been lost. It no longer exists. We can't watch it. One has to assume it was a pretty good adaptation, though, given the fact that the author of the book was also a co-writer on the film. It starred Alice White as Dorothy Shaw and Ruth Taylor as Lorelei Lee. Carol Channing would then star in the Broadway musical version in 1949 as Lorelei Lee, and then, of course, it was that musical that was adapted into the 1953 film, with Jane Russell, like I said, as Dorothy Shaw, and Marilyn Monroe here as Lorelei Lee. Even if you've never seen the movie, you probably know about it, and you've probably seen images, of this one number, Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend. Of course, that was the inspiration for Madonna's Material Girl video in the 1980s. So I listened to a free audiobook version of Gentlemen Prefer Blondes on YouTube. It came up on Twitter, a picture of the cover, and I thought, wow, it's public domain. It's probably out there. And, while I work, I like to listen to things. So I gave it a listen. And the woman who did the narration did it in a manner, kind of did it in character of Lorelei Lee, which makes sense because the book is written as a diary that's being kept by Lorelei Lee. So it really is in her own voice. And she did a really, really good job with it. And there's no credit given in the audio of the thing. So I'm not sure who it was who did that, but she did a wonderful job. Like I said, you could find it still on YouTube. So she narrates it in the style that the book was actually written. Now, again, written in Lorelei Lee's voice, and Lorelei Lee is a little bit dingy. So it's written in sort of run-on sentences in her way of talking. So the whole book is in character, and it's really done well. Here's one passage for you. A gentleman friend and I were dining at the Ritz last evening, and he said that if I took a pencil and a paper and put down all of my thoughts, it would make a book. This almost made me smile, as what it really would make would be a whole row of encyclopedias. I mean, I seem to be thinking practically all of the time. I mean, it is my favorite recreation, and sometimes I sit for hours and do not seem to do anything else but think. Lorelei is just this really, really great character. Amazingly unaware, and yet always very sure of herself and the things that she wants. A caricature to an extent, but based on real people, She's one of those characters that'll drive you nuts, and yet you don't really dislike her. And you get that in the 53 film with Jane Russell's character. The Dorothy Shaw character in the book is not super prominent. She's always sort of off screen, but she'll be saying things and interacting. I mean, she's with Lorelei pretty much the whole time. They make her more of a mother hen in the film, kind of taking care and trying to keep her out of trouble to the extent that she can. So a little bit more active, but it's that kind of thing where she drives Dorothy up a wall as well, and yet Dorothy clearly has affection for her. Well, like I said, now there's a lot of differences between the book and the 1953 film, but you can find a lot of bits and pieces in the book that are pulled into the film, just sort of out of order, or they maybe switch, people around a little bit. It's a very clever adaptation of the book. Now, the book follows Lorelei and her friend Dorothy through their adventures in New York City, then off to England, France, Germany, and back again to New York, and eventually out to Hollywood, California. Now, along the way, Lorelei tempts men with her beauty. We never know how far she actually goes with anything. One gets the feeling she really doesn't. She just sort of tempts them, gets some various, nice gifts from them, but always leaves them wanting more, shall we say. And sometimes she does this to the consternation of their wives. Lorelei's sole interest in men really is their money. She regards Dorothy, who falls for, good looks and a good time, regardless of how much money a guy has, as being very foolish and a bit vulgar. She's always chiding her. She's always, trying to correct her and help her onto the correct path in the book. And you get a little bit of that in the film as well. Now, one of the gifts that she is given is the diamond tiara. That really becomes the focus of the 1953 film. It is provided to her by Lord Beekman under somewhat different circumstances in the book than in the film. Here's a little passage from it. So then I met quite a delightful English lady who had a very, very beautiful diamond tiara in her handbag because she said that she thought some Americans would be at the party, and it was really a very, very great bargain. Now, that is a reference to the fact that a lot of English aristocracy was selling off their treasures because they needed cold, hard cash, and Americans were the ones who had it. And this crops up a lot in the works of this era. If you read the Jeeves and Wooster books by Woodhouse, you kind of get that too. The vulgar Americans with all the money and the cash poor British needing that money. So to continue with the passage, I think a diamond tiara is delightful because it is a place where I really never thought of wearing diamonds before, and I thought I had almost one of everything until I saw a diamond tiara. The English lady who was called Mrs. Weeks said it was in her family for years, but the good thing about diamonds is they always look new. So I was really very intrigued, and I asked her how much it cost in money, and it seems it was $7,500. Now, that reference to in money is because Lorelei Lee, really in a lot of ways, is the sort of ugly American. They have these things called pounds in England, but what is that in money? In other words, in US dollars, because to her, that's real money. Pounds, francs, marks, who knows what that stuff is, but what is it in actual money? And I love the little line about how it's really old, but diamonds always look new, so it doesn't matter. And you get a lot of that, of her impressions of Europe. She's not impressed. They go to see Big Ben, and she's like, well, we got lots of buildings taller than this in New York City. Like, what's the big deal with this place? There's not enough jazz. The big problem with Europe for her is that it's not America, which is what she really, really likes. Well, her love of diamonds also leads to this very important line. Kissing your hand may make you feel very good, but a diamond bracelet lasts forever. And then, of course, that is turned into the song A kiss on the hand may be quite continental, but diamonds are a girl's best friend in the 1953 movie and the musical that preceded it. So you could see so much is adapted. Lorelei Lee is from Little Rock, Arkansas. We get the song, Two Little Girls from Little Rock, that kind of, although I don't know that Dorothy Shaw was supposed to be from there. They kind of do that in the movie. And they change the characters around a little bit. Now, one of my favorite bits of the book are the smart remarks made by Dorothy, one of the world's great smart alecks. But they're strained through Lorelei. And Lorelei has virtually no sense of humor at all. So she never really understands that Dorothy is joking. She tends to take her seriously, which gives her a lot of consternation at times, or she just doesn't know she's being had. And somehow this makes it funnier. Like you're seeing Lorelei's interpretation of what Dorothy said, but you're kind of getting what the point was. And they really are actually funny. I was listening to this often while I was working in an office, and there were times where I had to stop myself from laughing out loud at some of the remarks that were made. And I will say Jane Russell does a really good job of being that sort of sarcastic Dorothy Shaw in the film. I don't get the feeling that was the real Jane Russell either. She tended to be known as being a very sweet woman. And there are some very cutting bits in the book, some of which may run into trouble these days. At one point, Lorelei muses on the use of what we now famously call the N-word, and it's something she does not approve of. Referring to her maid, who is black and who's very devoted to her, she says, "But when I got her the book," this is a book that somebody had suggested to her, "I nearly made a mistake and gave her a book by the title of," and I'm going to phrase this not the way she phrased it, "the N-word of the Narcissus," which really would have hurt her feelings. I mean, I do not know why authors cannot say Negro instead of the N-word, as they have their feelings just the same as we have. So, okay, that's kind of a good thing from Lorelei Lee. She doesn't like the use of that word. She understands that it's used in an insulting manner. She doesn't understand why it's used in that book or why authors use it necessarily. But it sort of shows there's a good character. But when you're first listening to the audiobook and there it is, you're going, whoa, okay, wasn't quite expecting that. We also learn in the book that Lorelei once shot a man when she lived in Little Rock, which we don't get in the film. Here is a passage. "So Mr. Jennings helped me quite a lot, and I stayed in his office about a year when I found out that he was not the kind of a gentleman that a young girl is safe with. I mean, one evening when I went to pay a call on him at his apartment, I found a girl there who was famous all over Little Rock for not being nice. So when I found that a girl like that paid calls on Mr. Jennings, I had quite a bad case of hysterics, and my mind was really a blank, and when I came out of it, it seems that I had a revolver in my hand, and it seems that the revolver had shot Mr. Jennings." Notice how she puts that. The revolver had shot Mr. Jennings. Now, this led, of course, to a trial. While crossing the Atlantic, near the beginning of the book, she runs into the district attorney who prosecuted her. She says, "So this gentleman on the boat was really the district attorney who was at the trial, and he really was quite harsh at the trial, and he called me names that I would not even put in my diary, because everyone at the trial, except the district attorney, was really lovely to me, and all the gentlemen in the jury all cried when my lawyer pointed at me and told them that they had practically all had either a mother or a sister. So the jury was only out 3 minutes, and then they come back and acquitted me, and they were all so lovely that I really had to kiss all of them, and when I kissed the judge, he had tears in his eyes, and he took me right home to his sister." Okay. In other words, Lorelei's looks get her out of a lot of trouble. They do somewhat adapt that in the film when there's the trial going on about the tiara, and there's a jury there. You can kind of see how the men are very easily swayed, although in the movie, it was actually Jane Russell pretending to be Lorelei Lee, but, Marilyn Monroe, Jane Russell, they kind of both have the same effect on men. Well, their trip, like I say, it goes through England, and then into France. And that's where I think it was in France in the book is where the tiara thing is dealt with. And then they move on to, as Lorelei puts it, the central of Europe, meaning Germany and Austria. This leads to really kind of the ending of the book as they meet a very religious man on the Orient Express, or the Oriental Express, who has made a career out of censoring movies. And Lorelei kind of wraps him and his mother around her finger. The old girl really just wants to have some fun. And Lorelei, if nothing else, can be sort of fun, because, well, she's really kind of uninhibited in a lot of ways. She does what she wants to do. And he winds up, well, I'll leave that for you to find out if you read the book, but it is important. And by the way, while she's in Vienna, she does manage to kind of knock Sigmund Freud for a loop, telling him her dreams. He's rather amazed at, what he thinks they mean. You do get a few famous people popping up in the book. There are interactions with the Prince of Wales at the time, who really loves Dorothy because of her American slang and the fact that Dorothy don't give a crap. She'll say anything to anybody at any time. And you meet some of the famous actresses of the time as well. All in all, it is a very funny book. Like I said, I was listening to it on headphones and I had to suppress laughter a few times. That would have been a little bit too loud. Loos is a really good comic writer. Well worth your time. Just her ability to write in the style of Lorelei Lee. And she doesn't miss a beat. And the way she says things, but they do translate into Marilyn Monroe pretty well in the film. Her ability to stay in that voice the entire time and really make it work. And the funny lines coming from Dorothy as they pass through Lorelei, kind of genius the way they did that. A lot of really big authors at the time, F. Scott Fitzgerald, for example, really loved this book. Critics were kind of dismissive of it at first, but the giants were like, no, this is really, really great. You get this satirical look at 1920s America and Americans as well as Europeans. Lorelei and Dorothy are not super impressed with the old country, and it is from an American angle, but it also kind of shows up some of the nonsense in their own cultures and societies as well. Like I said, you do get some celebrities in it, which is kind of fun. So it really does. It is a novel of the jazz age. And if you have an interest in the 1920s, highly suggest that you read this book. I think you'll get something out of it. You don't get as much of Dorothy as you would like in the book, but it's really hard not to fall in love with her cool, cute, brainy chick that, a lot of us dudes really dig. And you kind of go, God, I wish I knew, I wish I got to see more of Loos, in things she wrote, things she did, because you're going, she is Dorothy in a lot of ways. And she just seems like she would be really cool to hang out with, somebody everybody should know a lot better than they actually do. And Lorelei, walking through history and geography like a force of nature. Again, a character you cannot help liking despite yourself. She's ambitious. She knows what she wants. And, well, does she get it? Got to read the book to find out. But I highly suggest you give Gentlemen Prefer Blondes a try. Not super long. You could actually listen to the audio version, in a day if you wanted to. I spaced it out over a few days because, I'm at work doing other things, but I'd try to spend a little time on it. But you could finish it pretty easily. You can find copies of the book, and I mean copies from the 20s or printings going into the 30s on eBay at a very reasonable price, to be honest with you. And it is fantastic. If you love the movie, you should read the book. I think you'll get a lot out of it, and you'll see where things sort of cross-pollinate between the two of them, how it's adapted. But the book's kind of its own thing, and it is really good. But it's very much those characters that you like in the film. And if you've never seen the movie, but you have an interest in the jazz age, the 20s, if you just like funny books, go ahead and check out Gentlemen Prefer Blondes by Anita Loos, 1925. That'll do it for this little review. Let me know in the comments what you think of this book, if you've ever read it, or if you have any questions. I'd love to answer them for you. Just put it in the comments. If you enjoyed this little video review of Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, please give it a like, maybe subscribe, maybe share with a friend. But until next time, God bless everybody. Please be kind to one another. Have a little bit of fun out there, and I will see you again, hopefully soon, in Dad's Den of Pop Culture. Bye-bye.